To make this luscious jam, we have to start by peeling our peaches. I find the easiest way to do that is to scald the peaches in hot water, and you only want to leave them in there for about a minute. Then into an ice bath they go. Just like scalding your tomatoes and putting them in a nice water bath, it works the same way with peaches. It makes easy work to peel the skins just with your fingernails. I had an empty egg carton there that I decided to use instead of dirtying another bowl. And now you need to dice them up and of course take the seeds out. You're going to need 4.5 cups for a single recipe of the jam. The recipe actually calls for 4 pounds of peaches, but to tell you the truth, I had to correct that in my book because it gave me way more than 4.5 cups from 4 pounds of peaches. As it turns out, I will be making a recipe and a half, as you will see. So I'm measuring out my peaches. That's a 2-cup measure. So I have 2, now I have 4, and I only needed another half. So I keep measuring. 2 1/4 cups would be exactly half of a recipe, and guess what, guys? That's exactly what I had. So I have a total of 6 3/4 cups of peaches in my stainless steel pot. The next step is to mash these all up. Now I could have used a food processor, but it really didn't take very long to use a potato masher and mash away and get these peaches into little bit smaller pieces. The next ingredient is to add bottled lemon juice. Now the regular recipe calls for 1/4 of a cup. So what I grabbed there was a 1/4 cup measure and a 1/8 cup measure to make it easy for me to add what I needed to add for 1.5 recipes. And you need the same amount of bourbon that you need of the lemon juice. So that was added in as well. It's looking good so far, huh? Well, the next step after the peaches, the lemon juice, and the bourbon, we're going to go ahead and stir in the pectin. And the pectin is the agent that is going to end up reacting with the sugar and giving it that jelly-like consistency. Now, something that you should know, you can buy your pectin in these little boxes, or you can buy it in a jar. I like to have them both around for this exact reason. 1 box of your pectin equals 6 tablespoons. And 6 tablespoons is what is called for in this recipe. But since I'm doing 1.5 recipes, I'm going to need 9 tablespoons. Now I already have this box, so I'll go ahead and empty it in. And then I'm going to use my jar of pectin to measure out 3 more tablespoons. There's 7, 8, bourbon and peaches and a little bit of ginger says 7. So the last thing we're going to add here before we start cooking it is 2 tablespoons of crystallized ginger. Now the next step, I'll bring it in close. We're going to be cooking it on the stove, and we need to have our sugar ready. And it's going to take 7 cups for 1 batch of this peach bourbon jam. So I'm going to need 10.5 cups of sugar, already measured out in a bowl, ready to dump in. So we'll move on.
Over high heat, you need to bring this mixture to a full rolling boil, stirring constantly. And a full rolling boil means that it cannot be stirred down. You're still going to get that boil happening while you're stirring, and it's there. So now I'm ready to add in the 10½ cups of sugar. You need to stir constantly to dissolve that sugar. And we're going to need to return this mixture to a full rolling boil. And once we get it there, we're going to boil it hard for 1 minute. Be sure and set your timer because you just need it going 1 minute, stirring constantly. Then you're going to remove from the heat. And here, as you can see, I have some foam that I need to skim. Sometimes you'll have the foam and sometimes you won't. And it's time to jar it up. A boiling hot jar straight out of the canner. And I'm showing you there on my funnel that it has measurements on both sides to let me know, to help me with my head space. But I also have measurements here, which I'm showing you. Now we're going to want to leave 1/4 inch of head space. So we're filling up the jar until we get to that point. I'm using my debubbler there to measure for the 1/4 inch head space. And I'm almost right on it, so adding just a tiny bit more. Remeasuring. And debubbling. It's very important to make sure you get all of the air out of your jar. Using a paper towel that has been dipped in vinegar, I'm wiping the rim very well. Really important, especially to use the vinegar when you're using any product that has a lot of sugar in it, because it's sticky and the vinegar cuts it. You add your hot lid and your ring, and in the canner it goes. Now these are going to process for 10 minutes. I'm adding some vinegar there. That helps to keep your glass jars clean and free of mineral deposits. Put your lid on. When it comes back to a boil, it's ready to start your timer. And again, for this jam, it is going to process for 10 minutes.
After you've removed your lid, you need to let them sit for 5 minutes to acclimate a little bit more, cool off a little bit more, because you don't want to just pull them right out, because then you could cause siphoning of your product out of the jar because of the drastic change in temperature. And when you take them out, you want to take them out straight up. There is going to be water on the top of the ring, but don't tilt it. Just carefully take it over to your towel covered surface or some kind of mat that you have to set it on. Can you hear my pinging over there? That means it's sealed. Jars pinging are the canner's theme song. Oh, 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 oh. Ain't nothing sweeter than Georgia peaches. Georgia peach bourbon jam. That's what we have here. Now this is a pint jar. We never can in pint jars with jelly, but I didn't have enough cans to do both my peach bourbon jam and my tomato herb jam, and I was canning both all in the same day. So my extra I put in this. I'm going to be using it today, and what's left over will go back in the fridge, and we'll have to use that up pretty soon. Peach bourbon jam would go great on so many things. Just regular toast, a biscuit, French toast, also on banana bread. And by the way, look for that recipe coming up, because I can make you the best, most moist banana nut bread around. And that is going to be one of the next recipes that I do after the canning things. So today we are going to work with puff pastry. If you have never worked with this, it is so super easy to use and really tastes great, and you can make such pretty things with it. You normally find it in the frozen section of the grocery store, where they have like the frozen pie shells, which I never use frozen pie shells, but anyway, that's where they're located. And to thaw it, you can thaw it out on the counter for about an hour, or you can thaw it in your refrigerator. Takes about a couple of hours usually in the fridge, but usually if I know I'm going to do it, I'll just take it out of the freezer and put it in my refrigerator overnight, and the next day we're ready to go. But after you take it out of the refrigerator, you do need to kind of leave it out room temperature for a little bit. Now sometimes you might have a little crack in your pastry, but it's okay, because if you leave it out, it's pretty pliable and you can kind of smoosh the cracks back together. But what I'm going to do is, I like to use a pizza cutter. I'm going to cut this into thirds. And then I'm going to cut it in thirds again, which is going to give me 9 little squares. Like that. This is so easy to use, guys. There's very little to it. So I'm going to set these aside. By the way, I have this on top of a little floured cutting mat here. So I'm going to work with 1 square at a time. Using a paring knife, I'm going to cut about 1.5 inch slice at each of the corners. And I'm going to take about a teaspoon of this jam, and it goes in the middle. Then all you do is take every other corner of your pastry and fold it into the middle, and it makes a little pinwheel. So now I'm going to transfer it over carefully to my parchment lined baking sheet. And what we want to do now is brush it with an egg wash. An egg wash is simply an egg, and I add 2 or 3 teaspoons of water to it to make it a little bit thinner. And the purpose of an egg wash, if you've never used one before, is that it's going to brown this pastry, and it's going to give it a nice, beautiful golden color and a little bit of crispness. So I just brush that over the whole thing. Now we're going to bake this in a 400-degree oven for around between 17 and 20 minutes until beautifully golden. How about number 2? A little bit different design and a little bit different filling. So about 1/2 inch in. Don't go all the way to the corner. And on this side, about 1/2 inch in. Let that completely cut through. And then 1/2 inch here. And across, but not all the way. Add a little dollop of cream cheese, a little dollop of your jam. Now before I fold it, I'm going to add some egg wash to this outer edge. A little bit to that tip, a little bit to that tip. It's just going to help it stick a little better. So bring this corner in, bring this corner in, then come this way, and this way. And there we have our pretty little diamonds. Brush the outside with your egg wash. And again, you're going to bake at 400 degrees for between 17 to 20 minutes or until beautifully golden. Here comes number 3. Now this time we're going to make some blossoms, some peach blossoms. To make our little blossoms here, I'm just going to brush a little of this egg wash on the edges. Put our dollop of jam in the middle. Bring corners together. I'm going to kind of squish these openings too, because we really kind of need them to stay closed. That's why we put the egg wash on the edges, so that it can help that stay closed. Now, that doesn't look like much right now, but we're going to flip it over and use the smooth side. We're going to cut 8 slits. So you've got 4 slits in the corner. And then in the middle, between those. Then you're going to take 2 of your petals, bring them up and together, bring them up and together, up and together, up and together. And they look like little petals. Transfer this to our parchment lined baking sheet. You want to be sure and brush the top with your egg wash so they'll get nicely, beautifully browned. You like fresh Georgia peaches? Well, this number 4 will really be the bomb. For this recipe, I have peeled a peach, and what I want to do is grab just the fat outer edge there without hitting my seed. Like that. Now, for each of these sections, I'm going to very thinly slice the peach. First thing we're going to do is brush the edges again with egg wash. Put our jam in the middle. Peach on top. Fold the edges in. Transfer. Fresh egg white on top. Now these little bundles are not going to stay connected. The petals will kind of come outward and it'll look like a little boat. Just to show you another variation, I was looking in my refrigerator to see what other jams and jellies I had, and I had just bought some apple butter. I don't get it very often, but every now and then I have a taste for apple butter. I also have some apple jelly. So I decided to use this concept by putting some apple butter in the center, then an apple sliced the same way as I did with the peaches, sliced very thinly. Bring the centers together. Egg wash over the top. Now I have all of these on the same pan. These little boats with the actual fruit in it may take a little bit longer. Same temp, 400, but they may take 20 to 25 minutes. So I may need to remove the others before I remove those. In the oven they go.
While my wonderful pastries were baking, I wanted to make a glaze for the boats. So peach jam in one pan and apple jelly in another pan, and I heated them up. Oh, the gooey apple jelly on top of those little apple boats. It's also going to create this beautiful glaze, shiny glaze on them. Doesn't that look wonderful? And then I added the peach jelly that I had heated up on top of the peach boats. And I did this while they were still on top of the parchment paper and quite warm, just as soon as they came out of the oven. There it is, folks. A beautiful plate of pastries.
The nice part about being the chef, you're the first one that gets to taste. Really, really delicious. I hope you enjoyed this video and that you'll try these, and if you do, post a picture on my Facebook group page. Remember, bye, and have a good one.
Georgia peaches.